recovery are commendable, because over the past 3 years, I think our tourism sector has gone through quite some difficult times. And as a country, I believe that we have not invested sufficiently to be able to promote the very cow that actually gives us milk, if you want to say, the golden geese that lays the egg, you know. And therefore, when government seeks to put investments in the tourism sector, it's an effort that we want to laud. I think what we do not agree with is raiding, you know, air passengers to be able to raise that revenue. We believe that air travel as it is already is expensive. And so government should be looking at mechanism and modalities to be able to bring down the cost of air travel, to be able to deepen and promote air travel, as opposed to imposing taxes, because then this is going to make the air travel uncompetitive. I think that's our challenge. That's really the issue we are raising. We do not have a problem with the government plans to be able to mobilize resources to support tourism.
All right. Mike, there's also been some good news as well. Of course, that entry fees, international packs being scrapped. I guess that is a positive thing, but how do you think it's going to, is it really going to have a great impact, or it's just very minimal?
Thank you, Joy. For us, first is to congratulate the Cabinet Secretary, because this is the first time we are hearing very specific statements going into tourism recovery. Most of the time we have to look for the finance bill, we have to look for the budget estimates and so on. And for the first time, the government has taken what the industry requested and implemented to the letter. So we are seeing a government that is very, very committed now to tourism recovery.
Yes.
And it is a big thing. You'll recall just last week we were talking about leveling the playing field within the region. And that's exactly what has happened. Even though I read this morning that Tanzania has gone and done the opposite of what we did last year. So, they're shooting themselves in the foot. But it is very, very welcome news for us. For the last 3 years, we've struggled with our employees having to pay double tax on their income, and finally that has been addressed. VAT on service charge has been waived, and the employees are able to take home a bigger piece of the cake. And we think that this is a major step in tourism recovery.
All right. Tour operators as well have been exempted from a value-added tax. Mohanjit, I would like to hear from you on this, because this is all geared towards making sure that the numbers go up for tourism. But are we just being too optimistic? Are there other factors that are affecting the tourism industry that need to be ironed out?
Thank you very much, Joy. And just want to echo what Mike was saying, because it's so important to see that the President has taken tourism as a serious pillar of our economy, and having the Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Balala, on board, and just seeing the positive changes that have taken place in just the last 7 years. But in terms of your question, I think definitely the things that are being done, all the way from tourism being a standalone ministry, to the charter incentives that were put in place, a visa reduction on children under 16, and now the ones that we've most recently seen, all these, including the tour operator reduction of the VAT, is going to have a significant impact. I mean, I think if you look this year already, last year was among the worst years in tourism history. This year, as you've seen the results that Waziri announced, we have a 13.6% increase already. And I think we're on track for our recovery. Our goal is by 2018 to have 450,000 an increase in international arrivals, and I think we're well on track to that.
All right, we'll now take a short break, but when we return, we're going to continue this conversation. We'd also like to hear from you. Do you think the government is doing enough to re-energize the tourism sector? Use our Twitter handle, that is at KTN News, and my Twitter handle at Joy Doreen Bira, or the hashtag Business Today. We are going to take a look at some of your feedback in just a short while. When we return, we'll continue the conversation and also take a look at what exactly we need to do, short-term solutions as well as the long-term solutions to revamping the tourism sector. Do stay with us. Well, welcome back. You're watching Business Today here on KTN News, and would like to hear from you. Do you think the government is doing enough to re-energize the tourism industry? Let's take a look at some of your feedback here. There's someone called Kenneth who is saying, Kenneth Jabs, who is saying, at this rate, what we need is African leaders who are going to put resources into solid investments. And Stefan Effenberg is saying tourism would have positive impact, but not so much on security. Lots of conflict of interest are arising already. And we also have one that is coming in here from Miss Violet, who is saying the treasures in Africa, for instance, are those that only we ourselves can be able to put out in ourselves, and tourism does have that great potential as well. We'd like to hear from you and hear what you have to say. Use the hashtag Business Today and let us know what you think about re-energizing the tourism industry as well. In studio, we have Mohanjit, who is a director at the Kenya Tourism Board and also chairman for Ecotourism. Mike Macharia is the CEO for the Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers and Caterers. And we have Nick, who is the Chief Executive Officer for the Kenya Association of Tourism Agents. Thank you all for staying with us. You know, there's been an issue on whether or not Kenya is maximizing on the resources it is receiving. And Mohanjit, I would like to bring you in on this one. Last year, the tourism industry or ministry was allocated 6 billion shillings. I guess the bigger chunk of that money was spent on advertising outside of Kenya in an international ad. But then some critics think that that money was not well utilized. What would be your reaction to that?
Well, thank you, Joy. I think when we look at the way the money was spent, at that time there was not a board in place, so we can't comment fully on that. But you mentioned the CNN ad, and I think that is an ad that will have an impact. Whether that money was used in the best possible way in terms of a return on investment. I think what we need to look at now is globally things have changed. When we benchmark against other destinations, for example, like Australia, we see that they're using a lot of new technologies in terms of more digital marketing, social media. In fact, over 90% of all of their content as a tourist board is actually user-generated content. And I think this is what we want to see ourselves as a tourism board, and where our strategy is going forward is how can we leverage on the technologies that are in place. And with the social media, with digital, it's also much more trackable. With a CNN ad, it's very difficult to say how many new bookings did we actually get into Kenya. So as a board, we do have strategies in place that we're implementing, and we do believe that we're going to see an increase. But something maybe, Joy, for me to add is that, all these incentives that have been put in place will definitely make a difference. However, one caveat is that, as we know, for tourists, whether you're an international tourist or a Kenyan traveling to Mombasa, security and peace is really key and core to our whole industry. So that is extremely important.
Well, and that actually brings to mind some of the remarks that were made by the Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala about the recent demonstrations and protests. Have they, would you actually say, have they had an impact on sending shivers to potential tourists across the world?
Yes, I think definitely so. In fact, through the private sector, they've already noted that they've gotten cancellations, a lot of questions coming up, and we're coming up to our high season now. It's a time that, and booking trends in the last 4 or 5 years have changed. People are booking much later, so there's still a lot of bookings to be taken for the high season this year. And so it definitely has had an impact.
Okay. Mike, let me bring you in as well on the same, because everything regarding safety and security definitely affects hotel bookings as well. And, everything else to do with wildlife tourism, sports tourism. The coast lost 30,000 jobs in just 2015 alone. So what do we need to do to ensure that the political will is there as well to safeguard the interests of the tourism sector?
We need peace, Joy. We've, as you know, we've struggled with various security issues, terrorism being top on the list. Early 2008, the violence around the election. So what we need is actually an environment of peace. Tourism depends so much on the external environments. And if we are the ones now disturbing the peace as a citizenry, then that doesn't do us any good. And you saw that we called for amicable solutions between the politicians, and we keep saying you cannot be recovering in a cycle of 5 years. In 2008, we started recovering. We went to 2013, we had terror, we started recovering. Now we're about to finish another cycle of 5 years, we start recovering. It's about time we stopped these recovery cycles in tourism. We need development. And this is what we are calling on our political leaders to be very, very mature in their approach and what they tell their supporters. Because from the statements that we are hearing, there doesn't seem to be a peace agenda anywhere.
So now we've come from travel advisories, external travel advisories, and now we are causing our own problems. Let's now bring in Nick. Nick, there's been a lot of infrastructure development and investment in heavy CapEx projects like the SGR, and a number of roads as well are being upgraded. And I guess that's also, in a way, impacting on tourists, because good roads, would as well attract tourists. But let me take you back to the issue of the air passenger service charges. Do you think that maybe the government should look elsewhere to find these resources instead of having the charges on air passengers?
Absolutely, I think.
And if yes, where should these resources come from?
I think we are a rich country, I believe, if we effectively used our resources. I think I want to remind our viewers that currently government collects, the catering and tourism levy, and we are not satisfied that that resource has been used effectively. And I've had arguments that the money that is raised out of the tourism levy is insufficient for marketing. But I think if we prioritized our needs, because what we need now as a country is to be able to refocus our efforts towards marketing our destination. I think the resources that are raised with the tourism levy fund should, to an extent, go to that marketing. But also, let me say this: that we need to really ask the people who manage these resources questions. We've heard about issues raised with the fund that I want to go into, but we believe that there are sufficient resources within the mechanism and within the revenue streams that we have. However, we want to look at it also this. The government effort is counterproductive, because on one end you say you want to market destination, but again, on the other hand, you're increasing costs, travel costs. One of the greatest facilitator for us, air travel, is if you want Kenyans to leave Nairobi to go to Mombasa for tourism. Our roads are terrible. People actually flying down to Mombasa in an effort to promote local tourism. So when you increase the airfares, what are you doing? So those are the questions that we're asking. In addition to this, the airport fees is a highly regulated venture international.
We had said before, people are really struggling. And you had CS Balala announce that he was in talks with the World Bank and IFC, trying to find inexpensive financing, because you cannot refurbish at commercial lending rates of 22 to 23%. So we do need some hotels to access these funds and refurbish. And at the end of the day, your typical business, leisure hotel in the 70s is not the same today. The traveler then was happy to just come, sit on the beach and sun up.
Yeah.
But now, today's traveler wants internet, they want to catch up with the news, they want TV, so they want all these new facilities in the hotels, and that is something that we are looking towards. Just to comment a bit on the marketing and accessibility.
Very briefly, yes.
Very briefly. We have East African Single Tourism Visa that's now working, and that has increased numbers regionally. That's something we need to look at.
Yeah.
You remember we talked about an open sky policy to try and increase air access. And these are some of the issues that we need to be discussing. How do we implement that so that we get more people coming into the country? So there's, as usual, we never have enough time, Joy.
Yes, we never have enough time to talk about issues to do with tourism. But I guess, you know, going forward, we all need to see leveraging on technology as well, and ensuring that at least our leaders can have the political will to ensure that we have peace, safety, and security in the country. Now, let's take a look at some of the feedback from Twitter in regards to our conversation. Do you think the government is doing enough to re-energize the tourism sector? Naz Naomi is saying, I think it has. It has tightened security measures so tourism can thrive in the coastal region. And Chariot Raymond is saying, marketing strategy is vital for tourism business. Without one, our efforts are likely to be haphazard. And we also have one coming in from Naomi again. I think it has, well, you're just repeating the same thing you had said. And we have another one here coming in from Chariot who is saying, the recent incentives, especially on budget estimates, is a clear indication that we need to do more. We need to diversify from Sanson and wildlife to cultural and homestays tourism, and being accommodative to local tourism as well. If the government wants to boost tourism, it should relook at taxation, operations, cost, and security in the sector. Well, thank you all so much for your feedback. Let's wind up by taking a look at the markets, possibly. If we can have those on our screen, we can be able to give you a quick feedback on the exchange rates as well. The